Throwback Thursday, but the first segment today in the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we're going to deep dive tonight's Toronto Blue Jays starter, Jose Berrios. It's a big game tonight, right? Blue Jays looking to win this series at Baltimore. And I know there's still some hard feelings. I get it. I've got them too about how the 2016 Toronto Blue Jay season ended in the playoffs there, right? But the 2016 wildcard game was against Baltimore. That's the current series going on. And then the 2016 ALCS was against Cleveland. Jays headed home to Toronto for a weekend series versus Cleveland. So I thought it felt like a natural match that this week's Throwback Thursday, take a look at the 2016 playoffs for your Toronto Blue Jays.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Yes, indeed, been locked on Toronto Blue Jay baseball ever since I can remember. Blue Jay baseball is a big deal for me. I'm thinking it probably is for you as well. That's why you're spending part of your day talking Blue Jay baseball with me, and I certainly thank you and appreciate that from you. The Locked On Blue Jay podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Reminder, all Toronto Blue Jay action this season available for you to catch on SiriusXM. And if you're taking in today's episode on the Locked On Blue Jay YouTube page, hello and thank you for that. Hit that like, that comment, and that subscribe if you haven't already. Saw a new subscriber, Seaweed Chip, just a great name. So I thought, hey, I want to shout out Seaweed Chip. And I want to shout out Scrambles as well. Scrambles is a subscriber who left a comment recently about how he or she appreciates that the consistency on YouTube every day at 8 a.m. There's the Locked On Blue Jay podcast. If you take your podcasts in, on Apple, or like you listen to the podcast, it's available every day at 6 a.m. So I really appreciated that comment, Scrambles, because I try very hard for that. I'm a huge admirer of those of you who are waking up for, many of you for jobs you don't even like, but you've got responsibilities, right? And you're up at 5, 6, whatever it is in the morning, going to that job. You're going to put in a very legitimate and tough, hard day of work. I love the idea that if you're a Blue Jay fan, you have something to listen to start that day well. Doesn't mean you're always going to like the episode. Doesn't mean you're always going to agree with what I'm saying, right? But of course, I like the idea that as fellow Toronto Blue Jay fans, you have that to look forward to. For me, in my work commute, that's what I do. I look forward to the podcasts that I covet. So I really appreciated that comment, Scrambles. And to the everydayers, making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, you're part of who I'm talking about here as well. Thank you for that. Now, segment number 1, let's take a look at the man the Blue Jays are sending to the mound trying to win this series at Baltimore. I mean, dormez-vous for the offense shutout again yesterday, right? Jays looking for that series win tonight. Let's get into that game. Now, right here, right now, we don't know who Baltimore's starting pitcher is going to be. It was going to be Dean Kramer in this third and final game against the Blue Jays, but of course we know that the Jack Flaherty was scratched in Wednesday's start, and Dean Kramer stepped in there. So, going to see who it is tonight. Probably some sort of bullpen mixing and matching by the Orioles, but we know who's going to be on the mound for your Toronto Blue Jays, and that is the extremely impressive. Aren't we glad we did the re-up early? Aren't we glad he's a Blue Jay now and for the next couple years? Jose Berrios. Berrios checking in at 9-8, 3.39 ERA. In his career, Berrios has had 7 starts at Camden Yards, 6-0 with a 2.20 ERA. 2.02, beg your pardon, 2.02, even 2.20 is stellar, but I mean, even better. I'm selling them short there. I'll say that again. Berrios, 7 starts in his career at Camden. He's 6-0. 2.02 ERA. Is there cause for optimism tonight for the Toronto Blue Jays? Oh, yeah. Now, back on June 24th, so 2 months ago today, Berrios pitched 6 really good innings in a 7-3 Blue Jays win over the Oakland A's. Now, why do I bring that up? That was 2 months ago today. It was against the lowly Oakland A's. Well, that put Berrios' record to 8-5 on the season. I just said he's at 9-8 right now. So 2 months ago today, Berrios won his 8th game of the season. In the 2 months that have followed, he has amassed just 1 win. Now, is that Berrios' issue? Is that Berrios' fault? Well, he's had 9 starts since winning that 8th game 2 months ago today. In those 9 starts, his ERA is 3.00, 51 innings pitched, 53 strikeouts. So why on earth just the 1 win? How on earth just the 1 win? Well, in those 9 games, you 2023 Toronto Blue Jays, right? You already know where this is going to go. It's the pathetic offense. You already knew that. In those 9 games, the Blue Jays have totaled 28 runs. So 3.11 runs per game. In those 9 games, they've been shut out 3 times. What? 3 times in the last 2 months with Berrios on the mound, the Toronto Blue Jays have been shut out. My goodness. The Toronto Blue Jays have lost Jose Berrios' last 4 road starts, but in the 10 road starts, I beg your pardon, they lost his first 4 road starts. So this season, remember the first 2 starts of the season for Berrios was at Kansas City and at the Angels, and it was 2022 Jose Berrios. Remember, he got rocked in those games. It was 12 earned runs over those 2 games, and it's the 22, 23 starts since where he's really righted his ship and been incredible. So they lose his first 4 road starts this season, the Blue Jays do, but he's had 10 road starts since. Blue Jays are 8-2 in those 10 road starts since. And of course, you probably already saw this coming, that in the 8-2 in the last 10 road starts for Berrios, the 2 losses, Jays were shut out both times. Jays were shut out both times. So Jose Berrios on the road for the Blue Jays. If the offense does anything, Toronto Blue Jays have been winning those games. Now, the Blue Jays only had 2 wins versus the Orioles, we know, coming into this series. Well, Jose Berrios had one of those, and it was in this ballpark. It was at Camden Yards. 7 2/3 inning gem. 7 2/3, no runs on 3 hits. And all 3 hits, by the way, were singles. They had no hard contact against Berrios. He was so good that game, if you remember that one. 1 walk, 1 hit batsman, 5 strikeouts. That was a 3-1 Blue Jay victory. I know, even in the wins, Jays are only getting 3 runs. I know. But Berrios was incredible. You remember, he retired the first 13 batters in that game and just absolutely cruised. So don't need him to be, hopefully don't need him to be as dominant tonight for the Blue Jays, but a lot of cause for optimism that we're going to see another good performance tonight from Jose Berrios. Now, a couple of Orioles in their career have fared very well versus Jose Berrios. One of them is, let's get into that in a second here, but I do want to mention, because you're going to think that, of course, your mind's already defaulting to, well, of course, Ryan Mountcastle is one of them. Well, Ryan Mountcastle's just 2 for 13 in his career versus Jose Berrios. Of course, because it's Mountcastle and Blue Jays, so of course the 2 hits were both home runs, right? Of course. This guy, oh my gosh, but just 2 for 13. I'll say advantage Berrios on that one. But the ones we're going to have to watch out for tonight, Ryan O'Hearn, Baltimore's cleanup hitter, 7 for 22. That's a 318 batting average. He's got a 423 on base in his career against Berrios. Wow. And a 1.105 OPS. He's got 2 doubles and 2 home runs against Jose Berrios. So that matchup, O'Hearn's going to be in that cleanup spot. Berrios versus O'Hearn, going to have to watch that closely tonight. And before we get to Berrios versus O'Hearn, earlier in the lineup, you got Adley Rutschman to deal with. Adley Rutschman is 8 for 13 in his career against Jose Berrios. Holy moly, does he see Jose Berrios well? Wow. 2 of those 8 hits were doubles, and one of them left the ballpark. Now, other lefties, because Rutschman's a switch hitter, he'll be hitting left-handed tonight. Now, interesting to note that the other lefties that Berrios will face tonight, so Adam Frazier, Gunnar Henderson, Cedric Mullins, Anthony Santander, they're a combined 12 for 60. That's a 200 batting average against Jose Berrios. So as Berrios navigates his way through this lineup tonight, if he does get in trouble, if O'Hearn gets to him, if Adley gets to him, if there's men on, he's going to have a few lefties throughout this lineup that he can navigate to face them to get a big out. We'll definitely keep an eye on that tonight. Jose Berrios, man, he's been so good this season for the Toronto Blue Jays. Everydayers know how many times have we just marveled that this is the guy with the highest ERA in baseball a mere season ago, the highest ERA in the league. It's down to 3.39. He's in the top 15. If he has another good game here, he could even firmly entrench himself in the top 10 in ERAs. Just absolutely incredible season that we've seen so far from Jose Berrios. But I think it's very interesting. In the last 2 months, just that one win. You would think, if I just told you those stats on the surface, hey, what Toronto Blue Jay starters only had 1 win the last 2 months, despite being incredibly good himself, I think your mind's eye, rightfully so, would have gone to Kevin Gausman. Well, we see for the last couple months, Jose Berrios has been getting the Kevin Gausman treatment, very unfortunately, from this offense. Going to need to be better tonight. A reminder, of course, that Blue Jay Orioles tilt tonight available for you on SiriusXM. Now, coming up next on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we're going to get into some hashtag Throwback Thursday stories. But first, I wanted to mention an exciting new app called Bunches. Bunches is a new app built just for sports fans where you can chat sports in real time. Bunches is the free app where sports fans chat. Download the Bunches app today, and when you do, our friends at Bunches have featured the Locked On MLB Bunch in the Discover tab. So get that Bunches app and head to the Locked On MLB. It's in the Discover tab. If you've not already, check out bunches today. Today is Throwback Thursday. The Toronto Blue Jays finishing a series today with the Baltimore Orioles, the team that they played in the 2016 wildcard game, and then heading into a series with the now Cleveland Guardians when they were the Cleveland Indians, of course. That's who the Toronto Blue Jays played in the 2016 ALCS. I think you see where I'm going with this, right? For Throwback Thursday, let's deep dive the 2016 playoff run by the Toronto Blue Jays. October 4th, 2016. That's the day the Blue Jays hosted the Orioles in that wild card game. Didn't having home field, play a role pretty prevalent, right? Pretty darn important in that. And Edwin hit the walk-off. The Buck Showalter, the Orioles managers, the manager, they never used their closer in that game. We're going to get into that. I know you remember that. We're going to get into that here. But I mentioned that because that's October 4th, 2016. Now, 1 week prior to that game, 1 week prior, Baltimore at Toronto, the same ballpark. They're playing in the regular season. Regular season's almost done. And Aaron Sanchez tosses a gem. He would improve to 14-2 on the season in that game. And in the first inning, Josh Donaldson would hit a 2-run home run off of Orioles starter Kevin Gausman. Do you believe that? Kevin Gausman. Do you remember that? He would hit that 2-run home run off Kevin Gausman. He was an Oriole in those days. And the Blue Jays would cruise to a 5-1 win. And that clinched the season series for the Blue Jays over the Orioles. Because remember now, at the end of the season, both of these teams finished with the exact same record. So how come it was the Blue Jays that hosted Baltimore in that wild card game? Well, it's on the strength of the tiebreaker, which was the Blue Jays winning the season series versus Baltimore. That was a 3-game series, and Baltimore would win games 2 and 3. That was game 1. Thank goodness Aaron Sanchez won that game. That clinched the season series for the Blue Jays. Otherwise, this game would have been in Baltimore. Could have been significantly different. Oh, boy. Oh, that's part of the storyline, right, of the wild card game, was the fact that the Blue Jays were at home and everything that went along with that. Now, what about that wild card game itself? Blue Jays go 3 up, 3 down in the bottom of the first. Then to lead off the bottom of the second off of Orioles starter Chris Tillman, Jose Bautista goes deep. 1-0 Blue Jays. Top of the fourth inning with 2 out. Mark Trumbo would hit a 2-out, 2-run Trum bomb off of Marcus Stroman. So now it's 2-1 Baltimore. Bottom of the fifth, 2 out, nobody on. Kevin Pillar doubles. Ezekiel Carrera singles him home. RBI single. 1-1. 2-all. Sorry, and with a nifty little 2-out rally by the Blue Jays. That was in the fifth. It would remain 2-all the way to the ninth. It would go into the 10th. It would go into the 11th. You remember that wild card game went extra innings, and this, of course, is prior to any sort of free base runner on second base to start the inning. So in the bottom of the 11th, 1 out, the Orioles bring in Ubaldo Jimenez. Jimenez had struggled in 2016, but mere days earlier had a great start. Remember, I said thank gosh that Sanchez won that first game for the Blue Jays, because Baltimore won the next 2 in that series, so they would have been hosting this game. Well, Ubaldo Jimenez had a start in there and had a really good start in there. He went, so just mere days earlier, Ubaldo Jimenez went 6 2/3 against the Blue Jays. No runs on 1 hit, 3 walks, 5 strikeouts. And ironically enough, this wild card game was actually Ubaldo Jimenez's spot in the rotation as well. So he was on regular rest. So I absolutely get why Buck Showalter went to Ubaldo Jimenez. I know that to this day, Showalter gets killed for that decision, because he didn't go to closer Zach Britton, especially when a couple guys got on base. Zach Britton that season, of course, was an all-star. He was as good as it gets. He led the league with 47 saves. He was 4th in Cy Young voting, a closer, 4th in Cy Young voting. So that's how good Zach Britton was in 2016 for the Baltimore Orioles. And I still say, I agree with Buck Showalter. The stats bear it out. We've seen this year many times with Jordan Romano. The stats will show closers in non-save situations are nowhere near. They're shells of themselves. They're shells of them former selves. There's a certain sort of mentality that you need to be a closer, certainly be an effective closer. And part of that is that, you're protecting the win. I don't know. It's all mental. Like I get that, but yet I would have not gone with Zach Britton either. Baltimore's the visiting team. I'd be saving Zach Britton for the save opportunity. You need to take the lead in the top of the 10th or 11th or 12th, whenever it's going to be. 9th, whatever it's going to be, then bring in your closer to shut the door and advance in the playoffs. That's what Buck Showalter did. That's precisely what I would have done. So I know this is as minority as anything, as any, opinion I've ever had before, because everybody thinks that Showalter made a huge mistake there. I agree with Buck Showalter. Now, so in comes Jimenez. Devin Travis would get a base hit. Josh Donaldson would get a base hit. And then, of course, don't we know the rest is history, because here comes Edwin. Edwin took the Parrot for a stroll, for a very, very exciting stroll around the bases off of that home run. And that home run, my gosh, as soon as bat met ball, Edwin's hands went up. The Rogers Center went nuts. I mean, as soon as contact was made, this thing was way the heck out of there, right? This wasn't that might go. Oh, that might have a chance. This was a moonshot. And remember, of course, by the way, that was Devin Travis with the leadoff base hit. If I remember correctly, and I think I do, Josh Donaldson's base hit brought Devin Travis around to third. So even a sac fly was going to do it, right? So as soon as Edwin made contact with that ball, you knew the Toronto Blue Jays had won that game and had advanced. And when they did advance, how glorious was it? They would take on the Texas Rangers in the American League Division Series. That's a 5-game series, 3-0 Toronto Blue Jays. And remember, that was on the heels of 2015, the whole bat flip series with Texas. So Texas in 2015 came into Toronto, won games 1 and 2, but then the Jays would win games 3, 4, and 5. And in very next year, games 1, 2, and 3. So pretty incredible for Blue Jay fans who are Texas Rangers haters to remember that the Rangers took games 1 and 2 in 2015 in Toronto, but of the next 6 playoff games between 15 and 16, Jays versus Texas, the Blue Jays won all 6 of those. Pretty cool. And this one as well, you remember that was a 10-1 beatdown. I mean, the Blue Jays just served notice right away in that 2016 ALDS against Texas. They just served notice that, hey, we're absolutely the superior team. We're going to run right through you here. And they did. It was glorious. Now something significantly less than glorious. Oh boy. And on this Throwback Thursday, you may be saying, hey, Craig, 2016, I mean, it was years ago now, but it's still too soon. It's still too soon. Cleveland killed us. That's a terrible memory. Well, on Throwback Thursday, we do want to or at least I do anyway, I want to deep dive it. So ALCS versus Cleveland. Cleveland takes game 1, 2-0. 0-0 bottom of the second. Francisco Lindor, a 2-run home run off of Marco Estrada, who was great. Remember Marco Estrada in game 1 of that series threw 8 great innings for the Toronto Blue Jays. And yes, we're already going to have to start talking about Andrew Miller. I know many of you still wake up in a cold sweat with what Andrew Miller did to the Toronto Blue Jays in that 2016 ALCS. It was incredible. Andrew Miller in this particular game, game 1, he pitched an inning and 2/3. Quick math will tell you that's 5 outs he got. All 5 were strikeouts. Like right away, Andrew Miller was showing, hey, just so you guys know, I'm about to be dominant in this series. Hey, just so you guys know, I'm about to be dominant. And was he ever? Cleveland takes game 2, 2-1. So now we're 2 games in. The Blue Jays have scored 1 run. Oh boy. Bottom of the second inning, Carlos Santana, who has many, unfortunately for Blue Jay fans, many big home runs in his career against the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, bottom of the second, he hits a leadoff home run off of Jay Happ. In the top of the third, the Blue Jays would get a 2-out RBI double from Josh Donaldson that scored Darwin Barney. Yeah, of all the people to be on base, right? When the Blue Jays are scuffling, it wasn't a Bautista that he scored, or an Edwin, or Tulo. It was Darwin Barney. Okay, the score is 1-0. Then in the bottom of the third inning, bottom of the third. The game was at Cleveland. Sorry, bottom of the third inning. Here comes Francisco Lindor again, coming up with a big hit, 2-out RBI single, 2-1 Cleveland. Again, that's the bottom of the third, but the Cleveland pitching and the bullpen in particular, so spectacular. That was it for the rest of the game. Andrew Miller did pitch in game 2 as well. He tossed a 3-up, 3-down 7th and a 3-up, 3-down 8th. So he faced 6 batters, got them all out, and 5 of the 6 outs were strikeouts. So far through games 1 and 2, Andrew Miller has faced 12 Toronto Blue Jays. He's allowed 1 single and 10 strikeouts. He's faced 12 Toronto Blue Jays. He's gotten 11 of them out, 10 via the strikeout. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. And then Cleveland brought in their closer, Cody Allen, and he went 3-up, 3-down in the 9th. So the Blue Jays went 3-up, 3-down on the 7th, 8th, and 9th against Andrew Miller and Cody Allen for the then Cleveland Indians. That's a 2-1 Cleveland win. They're up 2-0. More Throwback Thursday goodness in just a moment. But first, I did want to talk about Sleeper. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. Sleeper has become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world, over 5 million active users in 2022, while earning some of the highest levels of engagement per user in the industry. At Sleeper, it's not just about sports, it's about building personal connections and lasting memories. You can get higher payouts than other apps with less picks as well. I mean, that's going to work, right? There's a built-in group chat functionality. Now you can see and copy your group's picks with the tap of a button. Entries can be made within 30 seconds or less. It is that easy. There's also safe and fast withdrawals. Put your fantasy baseball skills to the test. Well, not even to the test, right? Go out and try to win some money with your fantasy baseball skills. And if you use the promo code Locked On, you're going to get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Now, terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Now the scene shifts to Toronto. Come on, Blue Jays got to get this win here in Game 3. Got to try to get back in this series. Marcus Stroman, it was a 4-2 final for Cleveland. Boo. Marcus Stroman walks Carlos Santana to open the game. And then with 2 outs in the top of the first inning, Mike Napoli doubles him home. So right away, Cleveland's up 1-0. That was the Trevor Bauer bloody finger game, if you remember that. So the then, again, Indians, Cleveland has to bring in Dan Otero in the bottom of the first inning to replace Trevor Bauer. And the bottom of the second inning, that move already pays off. That bad luck for Cleveland already pays off for the Blue Jays, because in the bottom of the second against Dan Otero, some Canadian content, as Michael Saunders led off the bottom of the second with a solo home run. Now it's 1-1. Mike Napoli would strike again off Marcus Stroman, though, in the top of the fourth. He actually leads off the top of the fourth with a homer off of the Stro Show, 2-1 Cleveland. Bottom of the fifth, we'd get a leadoff triple from Ezekiel Carrera. Of all the names in this Blue Jay lineup in 2016, amazing that Ezekiel Carrera was one of the rare Blue Jays that had a good series. Same with Michael Saunders. So a leadoff triple from Ezekiel Carrera. Ryan Goins is the next batter. He grounds out, but it scores the run. So now we're at 2-2. We're at 2-2 going to the top of the sixth. Jason Kipnis touches up Stroman for a leadoff home run, 3-2. The Cleveland Indians would then add another run later in that inning off Joe Biagini. It's 4-2. Cleveland actually brings in their closer, Cody Allen, for the seventh and eighth inning. I mean, at this point, it's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? Who pitches the seventh and the eighth? Who pitches the ninth between Andrew Miller and Cody Allen? They're both on fire. It doesn't matter. So bring in Cody Allen. He shuts them down in the seventh and the eighth. And then to close out, to get the very last out of the eighth, here comes Andrew Miller. He would strike out Russell Martin to end the eighth inning. Now, Deandro Navarro would open the bottom of the ninth against Miller with a base hit, but then Kevin Pillar strikes out against Andrew Miller. B.J. Upton strikes out against Andrew Miller. Darwin Barney grounds out to end the game. It's a 4-2 final, 3-0 for Cleveland. I mean, jam done, right? Pretty much. It wouldn't be jammed done in the very next game. The Jays would extend it, because they did win Game 4 5-1. That was, if you remember, that Aaron Sanchez tossed 6 great innings. It was 1 run on 6 hits in those 6 innings. He was fantastic. And the bullpen would toss 3 straight scoreless innings, and all 3 were 3 up, 3 down. So the bullpen would come in the 7th, 8th, and 9th and get Cleveland 9 up, 9 down. Now, the Jays would get 2 hits from Edwin, they would get 2 hits from Saunders, and they would get 2 hits from Carrera in that game, plus a home run from Josh Donaldson. I mean, to state the obvious, by far their best game. In this 5-game series, the Toronto Blue Jays would total 8 runs. I'm going to say that again. In this 5-game ALCS, Cleveland's pitching was so good, Toronto would total 8 runs in the 5 games. 5 of those 8 runs came in Game 4. The other 4 games, Jays totaled 3 runs. Holy moly. So 4 games in. Now, one thing I want to say here, I mean, this is 4 games in, and we've had one mention of Jose Bautista. Well, he did not have a good series against Cleveland. He was 3 for 18, and he had 1 double and 7 strikeouts in the series. He was not good in the series. Russell Martin was 2 for 17 in this ALCS against Cleveland. Tulo was 2 for 18 in this ALCS against Cleveland. Kevin Pillar, 1 for 16. I mean, Cleveland's pitching was dominating the Toronto Blue Jays in 2016. Now we get into Game 5. Game 5, Cleveland put together a 2-out first-inning rally to score a run off of Marco Estrada. They would get a solo home run from Carlos Santana in the top of the third, so now it's 2-0. They would get a solo home run from Coco Crisp in the top of the fourth. Now it's 3-0. That would be the final. Andrew Miller would face 8 batters in this particular game. He would give up a single. Now, he just had the 1 strikeout against these particular 8 batters, so he struggled. But all told, Andrew Miller in the 2016 ALCS against the Toronto Blue Jays, 7 2/3 innings pitched. So he got 23 batters out, 14 via the strikeout. How incredible was Andrew Miller in the 2016 ALCS? Well, he was named ALCS MVP. He was incredible. the Blue Jays, I mean, in the series, the Blue Jays held Jose Ramirez to 1 for 17. They held Jason Kipnis to 1 for 19. They actually held a lot of the Cleveland bats down, but the pitching was incredible. And we hear a lot, we just went through the numbers, and your mind's eye will tell you Andrew Miller was incredible. One player I do want to shout out that I think is a little bit under the radar for how good he was. He really carried Cleveland offensively. Yes, Carlos Santana had some big home runs in there, but Santana for the whole series, I believe he only had the 3 hits. Now, 2 were home runs and 2 were key home runs, right? Don't get me wrong. But Francisco Lindor was really good for Cleveland in that 2016 ALCS. He was 7 for 19 for Cleveland in that 2016 ALCS. What are your memories from that playoff run from the Blue Jays? What are your memories from that wild card game? What are your memories from the Texas beatdown? Drop the comment there. What are your memories no doubt bad, about Andrew Miller, Francisco Lindor, and the Cleveland Guardians in that 2016 ALCS as well? Remember, now that's the last group of games. I know the Blue Jays only won one game actually in that 2016 ALCS against Cleveland, but that was the last time this team won a playoff game. Remember, Jays went to the playoffs in 2020, swept by the Rays in 2 games. And of course, last year, do we even need to bring? We know they were swept by Seattle last year. So that Game 4 win was, we didn't know it at the time. At the time, it looked like it was just something to help the Blue Jays avoid that sweep, but it actually was pretty significant in franchise history. It's the last time they've won a playoff game. Again, that was shout out to Aaron Sanchez, and the bullpen was outstanding that game as well. Roberto Osuna is part of that outstanding bullpen that day. That's why I'm not giving props to the individuals, because I don't want to give props to Roberto Osuna, but everyone else in that game, absolute props. But as you know, that was the only bright spot for the Toronto Blue Jays against the Cleveland then Indians in 2016. Was it too soon to talk about this? I felt, the wild card game was against Baltimore. Jays are finishing up against Baltimore, about to play Cleveland. That's who the ALC. I felt it made sense. I felt it fit. But if you're sitting there saying, listen, Craig, still, even though I enjoyed that segment, Craig, still too soon. I do hear you. It might be, it might still be too soon. Now, that's a wrap for this week's Throwback Thursday. I certainly hope you enjoyed today's episode. Now, today, in addition to the Blue Jay game available on SiriusXM, we're going to be scoreboard watching as the Rays host the Rockies this afternoon in a matinee. The Astros host the Red Sox as well in a matinee. And then tonight, the first place in the AL Central Minnesota Twins host a 4-game series against the first place in the AL West, but being rapidly hunted, right? The Texas Rangers, and the Texas Rangers coming back to the wild card pack as well. So that's a game for Toronto Blue Jay fans to keep an eye on for sure. The Seattle Mariners, thankfully, off today. They finished that 10-game road trip at 8-2. They can be off today, please and thank you. Oh my goodness. For now, keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB. Go Jays go, and we'll talk tomorrow.